When you think of Midwest Emo, American football is the first name that comes to mind for many. The Illinois-based trio formed in 1997, released a seminal record, and disbanded just a few short years later in 2000. While largely ignored during their original run, American football has seen a massive resurgence in recent times, which none of the die-hard fans could see coming. This would lead to their 2014 revival. Memes aside, this is the story of American football, a group that has come to define a real sweet spot in the history of 90s emo. Let's dive right in. American football was formed by drummer and trumpet player Steve Lamos and Mike Kinsella. A short time later, guitarist Steve Holmes would join the pair. They all went to school at the University of Illinois, and Mike actually knew Steve Holmes quite well, as they were roommates. Mike was already a seasoned musician, coming from highly respected bands such as Cap'n Jazz and Joan of Arc. Mike and Steve Lamos also played together in the band The One Upstairs for a short period. Already aware of their musical chemistry, the trio immediately had something special on their hands. They spent around a year crafting a distinct sound. Songs with a melodic beauty and pop prowess, showcasing some jazz influences as well that made their songs stand out compared to the sea of local bands. 1998 marked the year American football would release their first recorded output. After spending a considerable amount of time practicing and writing songs, the band was finally ready to put these songs to tape. Their self-titled EP would be the primary focus throughout the summer of 1998, and it officially saw a release on October 6th of that year. At some point, the band would be signed to Polyvinyl Records, and the EP would be released on the label. Let's discuss the music itself. This 3-song EP features The One with the Tambourine, Letters and Packages, and 5 Silent Miles. Running a little over 11 minutes, it's obvious American football were very serious about their craft. A clear aesthetic shines through that was totally individual to them. Track 1, The One with the Tambourine, is gorgeous, opening with an eloquently strummed splash of melodic interlocking guitars. Steve Lamos' drumming is noticeably very jazzy, fast-paced, and easily the driving force behind this luscious sound. From beginning to end, this is a song of complete and utter passion, effortlessly leading into Letters and Packages. Once again, the guitars are masterfully used as the emotional drive behind this EP, but Mike's delicate vocals bring the song to a new level, telling a story that is all too relatable. It resonates so strongly over 20 years later, demonstrating just how ahead of their time these guys were. Every local band that came afterward were simply trying to be the next American football, but very few of them came even close. 5 Silent Miles is an instrumental cut that delves deeper into the band's tight grasp on melody that so iconically defined their sound. While many bands of the time focused on songs driven by distortion, American football focused on their hook-driven pop tendencies to bring a level of emotional density. But there's something deeper to be felt here. This EP is hypnotic and spiritual. Listening to something like this really helps you understand you are not alone in this world after all. Following the EP, it didn't really amount to much at the time. It sort of fell through the cracks, but the band would play a number of shows throughout the Midwest in support. Not long after this, work on the band's debut full-length began. The band opted to work with producer Brendan Gamble. It might be a little bit surprising to hear, but the entirety of the album was finished in only 4 days. Some of the songs were half-written, and everything was seemingly thrown together at the last minute. But this project would ultimately become the band's defining artistic achievement. The creation of LP1 was spontaneous, immediate, and brief. Coming off their EP, not much time was taken to re-energize. Jumping into writing more songs while on the cusp of graduating college, the band was overworked. But American football would still proceed to make a seminal record in the midst of all the young adulthood confusion and responsibilities. Released on September 14, 1999, and recorded at private studios in Champaign, Illinois, let's dive headfirst into the record. Opening with Never Meant, the band's most memed and lauded track that has deservingly become the face of Midwest Emo, it has all the elements that have come to define the feeling of that era for many. Heartbroken vocals and lyrics, intricate guitars with math rock flair, along with the consistently bouncy and charismatic drumming. This track leads into The Summer Ends, spicing things up a bit with the trumpet, adding a layer of depth to the already subtle but powerful guitar work. The nuances of American football are demonstrated effectively here. Honestly, continues on this trajectory with an immediately sticky riff. Looking back on the past and what you can't change, this song is a total punch to the gut. For sure, picks up where The Summer Ends left off, bringing back the trumpet in a big way, cutting deep with its contemplation, and the brokenheartedness that follows a failed relationship, leading to You Know I Should Be Leaving Soon, a nice instrumental bridge boasting gorgeous spacious soundscapes, going into But the Regrets Are Killing Me. This one is all over the place in time signatures, going from 4/4 to 5/4 to 9/4 throughout. This song builds and builds into a noteworthy moment, keeping on the path of vulnerability. I'll See You When We're Both Not So Emotional is a standout track that is faster in tempo than most of the album. This is definitely one of the catchier moments on LP1, but one of the darkest lyrically. Once again, this song is honest and raw. Everybody has a story to tell when it comes to failed relationships, and to put it simply, it doesn't feel good. This song geniusly captures the feeling of everything in your life suddenly being up in the air. Stay Home is a lengthy continuation of the previous track, showcasing some of the most beautiful, moving guitar work of the record. Stay Home speaks volumes in its emotive approach both lyrically and musically, an obvious high point of LP1, but honestly, every single song here goes above and beyond in terms of quality. The one with the Wurlitzer closes things in such a simple but powerful manner, a repetitive instrumental bringing back the trumpet, concocting a hauntingly bittersweet ending to a masterclass album. It fades out as groundbreaking as it began. American Football's 1999 self-titled record is a journey from start to finish. The album has now reached icon status, simply due to how much these songs resonate, painfully relatable but confidently and professionally played so tightly, you barely believe a group of young adults made this thing. LP1 truly deserves all the praise it's received, as it's undeniably a landmark album for the genre. The record actually performed pretty well in college radio, becoming a minor local hit for the time, but the lineup of American Football had no aspirations to achieve much as a band. Mike Kinsella has stated he knew the band was going to break up while their debut was being recorded. It was a very brief period of creative magic that spawned the band's brief existence. Members moved on, leaving the city after college and starting their lives. Mike and Steve Holmes moved to Chicago, and Steve Lamos moved to Colorado. But as you already know, this was not the end. In 2001, Mike Kinsella formed Owen, a solo project to explore his musical ideas, but with full creative control. Also, Steve Holmes and Steve Lamos later played in the band The Geese. Around the mid-2000s, LP1 was pressed on vinyl for the first time, and I believe this was a big factor in more people gradually discovering the band's music. American Football was broken up for many years, a time capsule collecting dust, before the unthinkable happened a decade later. In 2014, with the anniversary of the now iconic album on the horizon, the band got back together to play some shows and promotion. They were definitely caught off guard at first, but quickly got back into the swing of things. A re-release of the album with previously unheard material, as well as a music video for Never Meant, came to fruition. All of a sudden, American Football was actually kind of a known name. For the most part, the members were unaware of its growing legacy over the years. Excited by the concept of a revival, the trio decided it was time for the long-awaited follow-up. It took 2 years, but in April 2016, recording for LP2 began, with new member Nate Kinsella on bass, a cousin of Mike. It's a miracle this album even exists, to be honest. Nobody expected the band to come back after so many years. Recorded at Arc Studios in Nebraska and Shirk Studios in Illinois, LP2 was released on October 21, 2016. Their third polyvinyl release, there's a very clear connection to the band's older material here. Instead, this time around, the teenage feelings explored on LP1 have turned into grown adult feelings. Well into their 30s, LP2 examines very similar themes, but from the perspective of somebody who's had a lot more life experience. There's a real maturity to these songs, a patience and self-awareness that masterfully conveys how little things really change as you get older. You're still the same human being, just a little older and a little more weathered. This album contains many moments of vulnerability and raw emotion that made LP1 what it was. It opens with Where Are We Now, which right off the bat gets you hooked. Mike's voice is lower, and you can immediately tell how much he's improved as a vocalist since the early days of the band. Musically slow, but with a subtle urgency that keeps you listening. My Instincts Are the Enemy features more of the band's signature twinkly guitar style that has come to define Midwest Emo. Once again, this one is emotional and dark lyrically, but musically gorgeous on the ears. Home Is Where the Haunt Is steals the show as my favorite from this record. It contains such a dreamy atmosphere, experimenting with some different sounds like a xylophone that work really well. Articulate and abstract, yet it's so easy to listen to. "I've been so lost for so long" is a crushingly sincere moment. The guitar is kind of sparse and used sparingly throughout, but so beautifully. There's something to be said for how well these guys sound together. There's just a natural chemistry. This chemistry continues through "Give Me the Gun" and "I Need a Drink" or "2 or 3. These tracks are sort of polar opposites. "Give Me the Gun" sounds carefree, loose, and rather hopeful, whereas "I Need a Drink" is brooding, defeated, and honest. "Desire Gets in the Way" I could take or leave, but I really do like the vocal delivery on the chorus. Finally, LP2 closes with "Everyone is Dressed Up." Existential in nature, this one brings back the trumpet for the finale, accompanied by a nice, introspective, dreamy riff. American Football's 2016 record is one that is admittedly not as memorable as LP1, but is still better than it had any right to be. It stays in spiritual touch with its predecessor and pays homage. The cover even features the same house as LP1. There's a number of cuts here that will go down as essential moments in the band's career. All in all, so many amazing songs here, even though I don't find myself having a strong desire to come back as much. Regardless, after being absent for 15 years, American Football returned with a project that made most of their fanbase pretty happy. The album made its way onto the charts, landing at number 1 for Billboard vinyl albums. The band would go on to play shows to support the record throughout most of 2017. Without taking much time to breathe, LP3 was in development as early as the beginning of 2018. It was clear the band was back in the zone creatively. Without much else to say, let's jump right into LP3. Released on polyvinyl and Big Scary Monsters, American Football 3 was released on March 22, 2019. A couple singles were dropped in anticipation of the album, including Silhouettes and Uncomfortably Numb. This is an album that challenges the label American Football consistently has attached, emo. There's a dream pop influence here that's apparent in a big way. Instead of the almost math-rocky angst of the olden days, this album explores ambient soundscapes that add to the overall tranquility. This perfectly describes the opener, Silhouettes. The instrumentation is still tighter than ever, but instead of leading the way, it accompanies the ethereal elements. Every Wave to Ever Rise, featuring Elizabeth Powell, is calm, building, and easy to get lost in. Powell's vocal additions sound nice and add an extra level of dreaminess. Uncomfortably Numb pushes forward with total ease, sounding so naturally played. Hayley Williams of Paramore does some vocals here, and they don't sound out of place at all. Mike Kinsella and Hayley play off each other surprisingly well, easily one of the more memorable moments of LP3. Heir Apparent to Doom in Full Bloom showcase the emotional depth of American Football. Simple in nature, these songs drive things forward with patience and poise. Both are slow building and painfully reflective during their decently long runtimes. Mind to Miss, like I Can't Feel You, continues on the path of dream pop, feeling rich and epic. Meanwhile, Life Support is a genuinely great way to end things. It's very layered and personal, consistently moving and an obvious highlight. LP3 was created in the midst of Mike Kinsella's divorce, adding an extra level of authenticity to the emotions felt on this record. 2019's LP3 carries the torch of LP2 in many ways. The teenage angst has paid off well, and the band is all grown up. LP3 displays the talent of its lineup well, and it's a great record for spacing out in your bed alone on a Friday night. The album did well commercially and once again solidified the band even further within their scene. That same year, at the tail end of 2019, the Year One Demos EP was dropped. This EP contains songs recorded in May 1997 that defined a significant period of the band's history. Recorded at Steve Holmes' childhood home, this is a very captivating look into American Football's early roots as a project dating back to mid-90s Midwest disillusion. American Football are sort of the unspoken kings of what we refer to as Midwest Emo, at least within the past 15 years. Their 1999 debut record has had a massive influence on so many bands that followed. That whole period encapsulated a very brief but magical time for the band and their creativity, which simply cannot be matched. The band's legacy has been forged in the history books, and their unexpected success story will not be forgotten soon. Such a brief discography, but such a significant one. This was the story of American Football. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. What's your favorite song by the band? Comment down below. Discussion is always encouraged. More music-related content coming soon here on The Music Narrative.